When justice flies the coop and a fox is loose in the henhouse, there's only one team that can take care of the case. We're talking about Chicken Police, painted red.
Fresh out the oven.
Chicken Police is a narratively driven point-and-click adventure game by The Wild Gentleman, and the first game they've released. From looking at the game's concept art, it seems like the idea of a chicken-themed detective story has been rolling around in their heads as far back as 2011. Eventually, though, through multiple art styles, the game saw the light of day in 2020, and man, what a game it is. Players take on the role of Sonny Featherland, a police detective from Clawville and one part of the duo that makes up the legendary Chicken Police. Being a narratively focused game means that there is a lot of talking, and I mean quite a lot. Just about everything in Clawville has some kind of backstory to discover, even the city itself. Citizens are made up entirely by anthropomorphic animals and insects, with humanity being a literal myth. Clawville's politics come up more than once and presents the city as a place where predator and prey live together in harmony, or at least attempt to. Think Disney's Zootopia, but with guns and cursing.
I get it. Just shut the fuck up already.
What honestly surprised me the most about the game was its writing and voice work. While full of cliché, characters are very likable and bounce well off of each other. The game has a good sense of humor and knows exactly how to pivot between dark, intense scenes and lighter ones, pointing out the absurdity of just what the players are looking at. I mean, honestly, the game is about chicken cops. Finding a way to make players see past that has got to count for something. The title is entirely voice-acted, which helps take some of the tedium off of constantly reading text boxes, and about 90% of the characters are well cast and acted. There's maybe only two characters that I particularly don't care for, one being Lance, who's the barkeeper, and the other one a snake psychiatrist. That guy had a little bit too much emphasis on the general snake voice S's for my taste. Still, regardless of how they sounded, they were still written well enough to keep me interested throughout the game's 4 chapters, which is always a plus. Sonny's voice in particular was perfect for him, as it slots right in with classic slews from the 1940s and 50s noir films. Noir itself is classified as a style of movies focused on cynicism, fatalism, and moral ambiguity, and Sonny fits this to a T. He's old, tired, worn out, half-drunk, and close to retirement. Not to mention currently suspended from the Clawville Police Department with deep wounds of his former Chicken Police partner shooting him with a shotgun, and his wife and daughter having left him. If only he could figure out which one hurt him more.
The last clucking color left this city years ago. And slowly I'll turn gray too.
Not being based on any previous material, all players are meeting the game's characters for the first time, but many of them are able to believably act as if they've known each other for years. A couple of characters are stated to be almost like immortal icons of Clawville, and you can really feel that with the way they're written. The only thing that doesn't really work is the tension between Sonny and his former partner Marty McChicken. Even though it's brought up time and time again that the last time the two Chicken Police worked together, it ended in Marty shooting Sonny with Big Bertha, his favorite shotgun, but the two seem to get past it almost instantly. Marty just seems way too gleeful to get a chance to be the Chicken Police duo again. It's almost like Sonny has to keep reminding him why they broke apart in the first place. A detective story is nothing without a case to solve, and the one to solve in this game hits some interesting notes, even if you've heard them all before, as they follow a lot of genre cliché. There's the mob boss, the informant, the femme fatale you'd see in just about any noir story, as well as the grumpy old police chief, mentions of cannibalism, and a plot twist I could see from a mile away. There's even a point where you'll visit a creepy insane asylum, though it at least stands apart by representing the people who work there as actually caring about their patients and doing the best they can with what they have, instead of the usual inhumanity these places have when they're depicted in other media. Still, Sonny's dry sense of humor, along with his dark read of the world around him, being paired with Marty's optimism and gun obsession, helps a lot to work past familiar plot beats. At times, it's almost like these two know they are characters in a video game. They never break the fourth wall or flat out say it, but they very much know the kind of world they live in. Clawville's prime days are little more than a distant memory, even if they don't want to admit it.
Well, that's true. But it's never that easy with you, Boss Bird. There's something you're not telling me, right?
The main gameplay gimmick of Chicken Police is being able to interrogate suspects and piece together conclusions, but the way it's done is kind of half-hearted. Each interrogation is a bit different, as Sonny will note what kind of animal he's talking to and keep track of how his questions are affecting them with a detective meter. Ask the right questions at the right time to max it out and get a 5-star rating for that interrogation. Ask too many of the wrong ones at the wrong time and you'll quickly find yourself looking at the game over screen. The main problem is that I'd almost have to do things wrong on purpose to make that happen. Most interrogations only have a handful of questions total, and only a couple that can be selected from at a time. As long as you get at least a few of the questions correct, there's no way to really fail, and thus animals will still tell you the plot-important information regardless of what rating you get. Interrogations can be infinitely repeated as well, which makes it easy to hear all of the dialogue and get the best star ratings for each one without any real consequences. The same pretty much goes for piecing things together, too. Every now and then, and usually between the game's 4 chapters, you'll get a chance to go over the facts and see how things connect. The problem is that there isn't a way to do this wrong. If the right people, evidence, and notes aren't put into the correct positions at the correct time, then you can't make any kind of connections at all. It makes it easy to just try everything with everything else until the game says it's correct, instead of making players think about how the plot comes together and make their own deductions. Very, very few detective titles allow this sort of thing to happen, with one of the few that do that quickly comes to mind being another game about birds called Aviary Attorney. I'm not very surprised that this is the approach Chicken Police took, but I am a bit disappointed. Between main story beats, there are also limited-time locations Sonny can go to in order to talk to other side characters that may or may not know something of importance and what's going on. These are only available during the current part of the story. If the main narrative moves forward, then they're gone for good. I always check them out myself just to be sure I never missed anything, but there's rarely anything overly important to find. It's pretty much all background information, which is great if you're interested in that, but feels like a missed opportunity. Some of these timed events are in places during parts of the story that honestly don't make a lot of sense. Going to one of these places usually just comes down to Sonny and Marty commenting on how odd it is that they're there at that time, and that's about it. There are some collectibles to find, with Chicken Police novels hidden around all these different locations, but that's pretty much the only real reason to go there unless you specifically are interested in more background information on the city or just the game's world itself. Mechanically, the only other thing there is to do from time to time are shootouts. Having a character that's obsessed with firearms to the point of carrying multiple on him at all times, each with their own unique names of course, means that at some point lead's going to fly. I was honestly surprised to see that these shootouts take the shape of first-person target shooting either at the police gun range or during a car chase. Everything's pretty simple for the most part, outside of the game wanting you to not kill the bad guys chasing you, but instead just stop their car. Both Sonny's car and Marty himself have separate health bars, but both are rather resistant to bullets. During a car chase, Marty can take cover in order to avoid some damage, but the car he's in obviously cannot. As long as players put bullet holes in the vehicle chasing you and not the people inside it themselves, it doesn't seem to matter where you hit the thing, and it's not all that difficult on the whole. The gun range is honestly way more interesting, being a shooting gallery on a time limit. Breaking criminal targets awards both extra time and points, while hitting civilians loses points. The main difference between the two is that players play as Sonny at the gun range and he uses a 6-shot revolver, opposed to Marty's pistol, which carries more ammunition. This means you've got to take into account when you need to reload at the range as to not waste your limited time. Unfortunately, while there is a high score table, nothing really happens if you climb the ranks to first place. No one says anything and there aren't any kind of in-game rewards, which feels like a missed opportunity. Even though the game didn't let me be as much of a detective myself as I would have liked, and forced my hand a few too many times, it still had its writing to fall back on to keep me interested. That is, when it wasn't doing something kind of weird. Sometimes during interrogations, and rarely during normal conversations, characters will mention things or act incorrectly. Sometimes you can get the option to ask a question about something Sonny never learned, or a character will introduce themselves after they've already been talked to. Since the game takes place over the time span of only 2 days or so, it's a bit weird someone would forget that they just saw you maybe an hour ago. But with how much of a mess of a place Clawville is described as, the occasional bout of amnesia isn't too far out of the question. Overall, Chicken Police is an enjoyable experience into a dark world of animal people. The animals know they're animals and sometimes even act like it. There's a good amount of world building to uncover for those who may find themselves interested, as Sonny has something to say for just about everything, and most items have multiple responses for them. Exploring everywhere I could to learn everything I could kept me hooked, even though it's easy enough to ignore all that and focus directly on the main plot. The game isn't too difficult overall either. I only ever got stuck on not knowing what to do twice, and I chalked that up to the game's art design. It mixes 3D backgrounds with 2D images of human models and animal heads photoshopped together, giving the game a rather unique look, one that works better for some characters than others. Due to the lack of color, sometimes all the black and white can make it easy to miss something that can be interacted with. Main scenes have an eye symbol that can be used to highlight anything players can click on, but the more zoomed-in specific scenes within those main ones do not. One of these zoomed sections was holding an important piece of evidence that I couldn't continue the game without finding, even though it fully blended into the background and I didn't have the option to make it highlighted. I had to look up a guide to figure out what I was missing and saw I was far from the only one to have had this problem. The handful of time the game asks its players to solve any kind of puzzle are rather simple as well. There's a safe code that's simple enough to crack just by trying every combination available instead of needing to actually figure out the solution, and a clock-based puzzle that pretty much just tells you the answer in the same room it's in. Neither of these require much thought to be solved. Every now and then, there'll be a section where you need to trace over something specific, but the game is rather lax on how accurate you need to be. For me, the lack of an overall challenge is very much a letdown, but that's obviously just not the kind of game that Chicken Police wants to be. It's not quite a point-and-click adventure game, not quite a shooter, not quite a detective game, and mostly what people would call a visual novel, just with chicken people. I do hope that this isn't going to be the only outing for the Chicken Police and they get to take on more cases than just Painted Red. The collectible Chicken Police books that can be found all have their own unique titles and give some idea of what possible future games in this series could be. That, along with the character writing and world building in the game, makes me more than interested in what continual Fowl-focused detective work could lead to. Thanks for watching, I've been MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later.
It's okay, Bertha. Maybe next time.
What was that?
Nothing. Just the wind.
Did you bring Big Bertha with you?
Gods, no. What are you thinking? What idiot would bring a shotgun to a club?
Was that a rhetorical question?
Want to see more of my stuff? Click the video on the left for Nightmare Reaper, a roguelite first-person shooter about killing your inner demons. Or click on the right for Land of War: The Beginning, a FPS set in Poland during the start of World War II.